For joining with us and being part of our group. Thank you for making such a huge difference in people's lives. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about an email that I just read this morning, actually. And it got me thinking about how do you change your cards and how do you change your stars? All of us have been dealt with a set of cards. All of us have dealt a set of cards. And a lot of those cards are not very good cards. I mean, I've been all over the world. I've been all over the world, and after going to 50 countries, I've been to Mother Teresa's tomb. I've been all over India, been all over China. I've been into slums all over the world. I've been to palaces. Catherine the Great in Russia. I've seen palaces, and I've seen everything in between. And honestly, a lot of people have been dealt some pretty bad cards in their life. And you've been dealt some bad cards. You're in a marketplace or an area that just doesn't have the resources or doesn't have the systems or whatever it is. I learned something very interesting when I was trying to figure out, after being exposed to all these really hard issues that so many people had in so many places around the world. And it all kind of comes down to what country do you live in? What are their natural resources? What are the natural resources they have? Okay, that's the first thing. Times technology. Do they have a lot of technology or a little bit of technology? Times the government. Is the government pro business and pro making things work, or is there a lot of fighting, inward fighting between the different organizations? So you get the natural resources times technology times the government. And that equals basically the national wealth. We'll just call it the national wealth, divided by the number of people, divided by the number of people. So when you go to Norway or you go to Dubai or you go to Saudi Arabia, they have massive resources. They have all this oil, massive amount of oil that it's right on top of the surface. It's easy to get to. Massive resources times pretty good technology. They're very aggressive with their technology. They make stuff work fast and quick. Times a very aggressive government that really wants to take care of their people. That equals a huge national wealth divided by a small number of people. A small number of people that live there. Norway, very difficult to get in there and be a citizen. You got my niece and a nephew there he's teaching at a university there, and it's going to be 5 years before they can even apply for any kind of citizenship. But they were dealt some pretty good cards. The people in those countries were dealt very good cards. And then you go to other places around the world that I've been to, and I'm going to just use China, for example, and India and many places around the world where there's resources, but the people, the technology is not there. The roads are small, and it's very hard to get stuff going. Transportation is hard. Times they're fighting with each other. They're not in sync with each other, and they have territorial rights and stuff like that, which makes the whole thing very ineffective. That equals their national value divided by 1.4 billion people. So many people got some pretty rough cards. It's tough cards there. And this gentleman that wrote me the email today said, I grew up in a family of beggars. Or I had some people in my family that were beggars. They got some pretty terrible cards. They live in an area that the cards that they were dealt as a family, or how they chose to play those cards, or whatever it was, the cards that they were dealt were pretty tough. And he has a story and he has his cards versus somebody that was born in it with a silver spoon who doesn't have to do anything. Well, they say shirt sleeve to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, or rice paddies to rice paddies in 3 generations. Now, what that means is that generation 1 usually is so upset with what cards that they were dealt that they change in their cards. They change their cards out. They figure out how to do things. My dad was that way. My dad and mom grew up during the Depression in 1930. They were both born in 1930. Hitler came into power right after that. The World Depression happened in 28. They grew up with nothing. They didn't even have two nickels to rub together. My mother's father passed away when she was really young. I think she was 4 or 5, just very, very young. Devastated my grandma. And many people have got some pretty rough cards. But the key is that you have to figure out how to change your cards. And the person that has the silver spoon usually goes back to shirt sleeves because number one, earns it. Number two, usually enjoys it. And number three, usually spends it. And then the fourth generation has to go make it again. Why? Because they weren't taught. They didn't need to go do it on their own. They didn't need to learn how to do it because somebody else did it for them. Your job is to teach them how to do that. So I'm going to show you some fun little slides here I've got that will give you my interpretation of teach a man to fish. So if you're going to teach a man to fish, if you're going to give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Okay, so this is two of my kids, and this happens to be Alaska, but it's really kind of a fun thing. We're out there. What are you fishing? If you're sitting on the shore and you have, you're fishing from the shore, the fish aren't very big right by the shore. They're very, very small. So if you want to change your cards, you have to go fish someplace else. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you can give him a fishing boat or a fishing pole, and you can teach them how to fish, go fish with them, be there with them to help them learn how to fish, and go out where the fish are. They're not sitting right there at the dock. The fish are not swimming right up at the shore. Now, some might be, but usually the big fish are out in the boat, and you have to go out and find them. And when you go out into the real deep waters, guess what? There's big whales and big fish. So this happens to be in Alaska, and we're in our boat. We're in our little boat out there. There's 3 or 4 of us in that boat, and we saw whole pods and pods of these big whales. Now, where the whales are eating is where there's big fish, because they like big fish. So my point is that if you look at all these, each of you were dealt some cards. Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you can take him fishing, show him how to fish, get in the boat, go where the fish are. The fish aren't at the dock. The fish aren't right there on the shore. Now, some might be, but the big fish are someplace else. And if you'll get in the boat, you'll find somebody who has a boat, and you take that boat someplace else, and you take it 4 or 5 blocks away from the shore. The odds of catching a big fish go up dramatically. Now, what does that mean to you? Many of you have businesses, and many of you have to start a small business. Okay, you're just waiting for somebody to give you a fish. You got to start a small business. You learn about how other people have done small businesses. You add more value. You study successful people. How did they do their fishing? How did they catch the fish? And they solve bigger problems. That's what business is all about. Have fun with it. Business is the game, and games are fun. Life's the game, and games are fun. So let's have some fun with it. But if you can get somebody to take you someplace else in the pond or up the stream where there's more fish, then you can catch bigger fish. Now, one of the greatest things that you have access to is that if you live in an area where it's considerably inexpensive to live, because that's just the area, housing is less, and that's a problem, but housing is less. If you can learn how to use the internet to go fishing someplace else in the pond, you can catch bigger fish. And these bigger fish, you'll make more money selling these bigger fish, and that will up your standard of living pretty dramatically. The internet is the big equalizer. Right now, we have people all over the world watching this class. When I was growing up, that was about, there's no way we could ever do that. Even when we were doing all the big events, We never had the ability to reach out to people around the world. It was all face to face, toe to toe. So that is how you change your stars. You go fishing somewhere else. And then as you start these businesses, these small businesses, you're going to teach other people how to fish. And you'll probably get a boat. Maybe you'll get multiple boats. And when they go fish, you can give them a better life. And guess what? They're going to share their fish with you, which makes it even better for you. So the third step is that if you can teach a man to teach, you can change a whole generation. Now, instead of one boat, we got 5 boats, we got 10 boats, we got 20 boats. And everybody that's out there fishing out in the lake or the pond are catching more fish, and they're feeding their families, and they're having a better life. Just because one person decided, I'm not going to fish from the shore. I'm not going to just fish with a net. I'm going to go figure out how to be able to get a boat and go out there where the big fish are. And then I'm going to get more boats, and I'm going to help more people. I'm going to add more value. And all the people that do work for me, I'm going to teach them how to do it. And then one day they're going to say, hey, you know what? This is awesome. I'm going to go buy my own boat and go out on my own. And your job is to thank them and congratulate them. Your job is to help people move on to the next level. I've done that my whole career with many of our many employees. Is that once they've got to a certain level, then I help them get on their own. So they get their own boat, and then they go teach more people. That's how we change lives. So the guy that got born with a silver spoon, well, most likely he didn't know what to do with it. And yes, there's huge differences. Sometimes they're really taught these. Sometimes they just blow it. That's why they say shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, rice paddy to rice paddy in 3 generations. It's not the money that the generation 2 had or the generation 3 had. It was the knowledge. It was the doing it. It was playing the game. So go play the game, and games are fun. Play the game of money, play the game of real estate, play the game of life, play the game of whatever it is you're doing. And just remember that games are fun. And it's okay to lose, because we're not curing cancer here. We're just trying to make a difference. So that's my big piece today. It doesn't matter if you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You'll actually have more fun. This is a terrible thing to say. I mean, I grew up in a small town with 3,000 people. And, none of us kids had money. If I wanted money, I had to go earn it. And so I started selling stuff door to door, cleaning up bathrooms, cleaning up floors, washing dishes at a truck stop. I mean, but I learned the game, and my dad taught me the game, but I had to ask him the game. I literally had to go ask him the game and watch him, because I'd see him do things, then I'd go ask him what he's doing. And he would teach me those things he was doing. And some of those early things that I learned about compound interest and helping people. My dad grew up in the car business, tough business. And he found a way that there was a lot of people who could not qualify for a car. And so we as a family and us kids started taking our money and giving it to our dad, and he would loan it out on a car. And he taught me, he says, as long as you give them a good car and it runs, because they're not buying a car, they're buying transportation. As long as it runs, they're going to pay you. If you give them a bad car and it doesn't run, they're not going to pay you. And at an early age, I was making 12%, doubling my money every 6 years. Well, using those same principles in many of my other many companies and investing, I've done millions and millions of dollars using that same strategy. And I would have never known that if my dad wouldn't have started that when I was a teenager. And I learned about it, and I was hungry to learn about it. I was one of 10 kids. I'm number 7. I'm on the tail end. Everybody's born with cards, and playing the cards and winning with whatever cards you got is what's fun. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. We're going to be right back in our next section. So play the cards. Life's a game. Games are fun. So let's